Hello everyone, welcome back to Version of Events. I'm Ellie, I'm your host, and I'm so glad to have you with us this week. And this episode is hopefully the first of at least semi-regular episodes while I get used to doing all the work on my own. Missed you, Jess. Not just for the work, obviously. So what will we be talking about this week? This week we will be going through week 1 of the trial of Mohammed Durnion and Adam Moore of the murder of Reanne Coulson. Reanne's been covered a lot on this podcast, so it felt only right to do my part in reporting the case to you. And I thought kind of like a weekly roundup of the case on what goes on in court might just be the best way of getting information to you. So before we get into it all, for anyone who is hearing Reanne's name for the first time today, here's a little reminder of Reanne's story. Reanne Coulson was last seen alive and well on the 21st of May 2025 after she was captured on CCTV. Reanne was then missing for just over a month when her body was found in Binley Wood in Coventry, though she would not be formally identified until the 8th of July 2025. Police arrested Mohammed Durnion on the charge of murder and Adam Moore with assisting an offender. We then had the agonising wait for the trial after both men pleaded not guilty at Warwickshire Crown Court. Well, the wait is finally over. Court convened on Monday the 2nd of March, and a jury of 7 women and 5 men were officially called and seated for the trial to begin. But it was on Tuesday the 3rd of March that saw court really get into full swing. The prosecution began pleading their case, and the court heard a 999 call placed by the accused murderer's neighbour, in which a woman could be heard screaming. It is, of course, the belief of the prosecutors that those screams came from Reanne. Police did attend Durnion's flat and do a brief search, but failed to find Reanne's body at that point. So, in terms of a timeline, prosecutor Tim Cray KC, and KC stands for King's Counsel for any listeners from abroad, told the court that Reanne had last been seen alive and well shortly before 10 p.m. on the 21st of May, and after she'd attended a local support group for women who were vulnerable to sexual exploitation. And that went on at a local church. Reanne had been chatting with staff members at the support group. And it was only 1 hour later that a man living 350 yards from the church heard a woman screaming in fear, and that's a quote. Those sounds were coming from Durnion's flat. The neighbours called the police, who attended, and it only took them 12 minutes to attend, but they didn't see Reanne during their brief search. So Tim Cray alleges that Durnion had hidden Reanne under the mattress of his bed from the officers who arrived, like I said, 12 minutes after the call had been made. After police left his flat, Tim Cray KC then claimed that Durnion put Reanne into a suitcase before driving to the woodland that Reanne would ultimately be found in. It's also important to note that Durnion agrees that he was the last person to see Reanne alive, and he agrees that he buried her body. So, what could have happened to Reanne if Durnion is, as he claims, innocent of murder? Well, Mohammed Durnion's defense begins like this. It begins with him picking up Reanne thinking she was a sex worker. Now, bear in mind, Reanne had engaged in sex work before, so this could have been the reason that she got into a car with a stranger. However, she's still a human. Let's just remember that. Sex work is work, but it's dangerous work. However, Durnion maintains that no sexual activity happened between them. In fact, he claims that when they got to the flat, Reanne took drugs. Again, let's not forget that Reanne was at times a drug user and faced many challenges, but this does not make her less human. Became high and started an argument which may be the cause of the screaming heard by a neighbour with him before overdosing. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Instead of calling an ambulance for an overdosing person, which would be the expected course of action, instead of doing that, he chose to watch Reanne die. Of course, he then claims that out of fear he would be blamed for her death, he decided to transport Reanne's body to Binley Woods, where he called in help from Adam Moore, and the two then burned her face and body, post-mortem, fortunately, I guess, if you can even say that about that, possibly to try and make her harder to identify, and then buried her in a shallow grave. So now I want to take you back to the timeline, because the prosecution argues that Durnion's account doesn't line up with the evidence. The prosecutor, Tim Cray KC, told the court that the timing just didn't add up, that the attack on Reanne began within a minute of Reanne's arrival of Durnion's flat. In fact, the prosecutor in this case claims that this was a, quote, deliberate attack by a powerfully built man, unquote. Tim Cray put it to the court, quote, is that really long enough to take drugs, get high, start arguing, and overdose? End quote. And this podcaster has to admit, it doesn't seem like it's long enough to me. Reanne was eventually found when a, quote, distressed Durnion led police to the land that he and Adam Moore had buried Reanne in. Officers reported a strong smell of petrol around the grave site. Durnion made comments there about taking, quote, stupid amounts of cocaine, end quote, and said he used a shovel to dig Reanne's shallow grave. So finally, let's talk about the post-mortem. The pathologist who conducted the autopsy found marks of injury to Reanne's head and neck, and it was the opinion of the pathologist that these marks and their subsequent bruising were caused while Reanne was alive. However, the burn injuries that I mentioned to Reanne's beautiful face and body had been caused after death. I won't lie, there is a part of me that's relieved she did not have to feel the pain of being burned, but as mentioned above, the pathologist believed this was to try and destroy that part of her body, or maybe even her identity. Forensics were also able to show that the print of the bottom of Adam Moore's trainers were the same as footprints found at Reanne's burial site. So now I'd like to just take a minute to remember that while Reanne faced challenges in her life, she was still a human being. A mother, a sister, a daughter, a woman. Just because those things were an issue for her should not influence your opinion of her. Reanne was a much-loved member of the Coulson family. She had friends and a life that it sounds to me like she was trying to improve by attending support groups and finding help for her struggles. I have been in touch with Reanne's dad, who is an absolute legend, keeping his family together throughout the trial, which they're there every day for. So Luke, if you're listening, you've got all of our support. Every listener will be thinking of you and Reanne and praying for justice to be delivered for her and for you all as her family. For now, that's everything that I can find on the trial. But when more comes out, I will write another script, record, and get it out to you as soon as possible. Or if it's a short amount, I might even do a social media post. So with that said, don't forget to find us on Facebook at Version of Events. In fact, we're at Version of Events everywhere on social media. And follow us wherever you're listening to us. And if you happen to be listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate us. A 5-star review would be amazing, and I'll love you forever for it. Share the episode if you think it's worth sharing, and make sure you've got your notifications turned on for every time I post. And I will be back ASAP with an update on Jacques Graton's case, so keep an eye out for that. Keep safe, everyone. It's a dangerous world out there, so keep safe, and bye for now.